Hello and welcome to What Did I Miss? Where today I am breaking down the fourth episode of the third season of Discovery, titled Forget Me Not, and looking for Easter eggs, references, and past hosts. This episode was a step back from the action we saw in the first three episodes of the season, and instead dealt with the internal struggles of the crew, including its newest member, Adira. The main focus of the episode was returning the symbiont within Adira to the planet Trill, and we get some great callbacks to some of the culture of this species that was explored in Deep Space Nine, as well as seeing how the culture was affected by the burn. We also see that the crew is not holding it together as much as they would like us to think they are, and that they have to confront the enormity of their decision to leave everything behind before they can truly move forward. Here, I will recap the episode and point out all the references I noticed, but as always, if there's anything I missed, please let me know in the comments. Also, please like this video, and if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing for weekly Star Trek videos. This is What Did I Miss?
That's more your specialty.
This is your spoiler warning for the week, so if you do not want the episode ruined, please watch it first, then come back here. The episode starts with Dr. Culber explaining the current state of the crew as we see robots complete repairs of the ship. I like the scene because by starting with seeing the drones and also hearing Dr. Culber's voice of reason and calm, it is almost like we are in the minds and bodies of the crew, trying to just go about our work like drones, but hearing this voice in our head telling us that we are maybe not okay. This episode to me is all about connections, the connections we feel to each other, to our own lives and what we can control, as well as how connected and confident we feel in the person we have become. The device that Dr. Culber is using to examine all the crew is very similar to a device Dr. McCoy was known to use on the USS Enterprise. After examining Adira and seeing the symbiont within her, they begin to question her about what she remembers, and at one point she mentions being able to make a mean Hasperot, which is like a burrito from the planet Bajor that was shown on Deep Space Nine, the first of many callbacks to the series within this episode. She also mentions that she lost her memories a year ago, which means that whatever happened to her happened a year after the message from Admiral Tall was sent. They decide the only way to find out what has happened is to take Adira to Trill, and they agree to the mission. They arrive and are greeted by Commissioner Voss, who is very happy to see the ship and welcomes them, especially after Saru tells them that they have a Trill symbiont on board. Saru then confronts Stamets and asks him to develop an alternative to operating the spore drive, especially since now the spore drive may be the only form of warp-like speed in the galaxy. Tilly tries to speak with Stamets about it, and he blows her off in a much more aggressive way than usual. Her idea is to use dark matter, which was shown last on Discovery in the first season episode involving Mudd named Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, in which Mudd used weaponized dark matter capsules to threaten the crew with. Culber suggests that Burnham accompany Adira to Trill due to her life experience. Culber also discusses the theory of post-traumatic growth, which is really the process this episode is showing us in real time. Adira meets up with Burnham and discusses the mission, and Adira expresses that she does not want to let everyone down, which I think is some part of her past host personality breaking through. We then see Dr. Culber again, this time speaking with the Captain Saru. Culber expresses that while the crew is physically able, that mentally and emotionally they are spent, and this includes the captain. Saru concludes that the crew is stressed and that something needs to be done so that the crew feels connected again. One of the constant critiques of Discovery has been that the crew does not feel like a family like the other crews have, and I almost feel like the show is using this event as an opportunity to show us that evolution. Burnham and Adira land on Trill, and it is a very beautiful and lush planet, much different from the landscapes that we have seen so far this season. The Trill Council introduced themselves and explained how their culture was decimated by the burn. When Burnham and Adira introduce themselves, the Council is very surprised to see that Adira is not a Trill. I think that another theme of this episode is identification, and it is very telling that the Trill Council members are wearing two different colors of robes, and that the leader is wearing white, which is a color that is supposed to encompass all colors, but underneath the white robe is a color much more similar to the orange and gold robes that Voss and his side are wearing, showing that even though she is supposed to be impartial, that she has leanings towards one side. Much like the world many of us see outside our homes and even sometimes within them, this imagery shows us that even within this peaceful, tranquil society, there are two sets of beliefs that struggle against each other. One side that holds on to the past ideals, and one driven by the evolution of the society. Voss explains that there has never been a Trill symbiote joined to a non-Trill in 2,000 years, as his demeanor becomes more and more demonstrative. He states that since they are no longer part of the Federation, that their law supersedes all other in this case, and wish to remove their symbiote from Adira, which could kill her. Burnham states she will not allow this, and the Trill leader states that they must leave Trill immediately. As they are led away, they are stopped by Voss and his followers. They attempt to attack them, but Burnham is able to subdue them all easily. Adira remarks that Burnham's actions are not Starfleet protocol, which is another sign of the change that Burnham has gone through in the year she has been away from Discovery. Guardian Z stops them and states that he will gladly take them to the caves, as they may be the key to saving his species. We then see Saru discuss the state of the crew with the computer as he tries to figure out something that will help his crew. I had to laugh when the computer was saying things like exercise and shopping, because I just imagine how many people have asked Alexa this year how to make them feel better, and I'm sure that's the same answer she gives. We then see what looks like a picture of the sphere data take over the computer panels in the room behind Saru, which he seems to notice at first. Then the computer begins to laugh, and suggests that laughter is a good remedy to stress, as well as suggesting a meal with the crew. Saru seems to notice something is off, and asks the computer to run a self-diagnostic, which is a term of phrase that we use routinely around Data and the Doctor that basically asks an artificial intelligence to check that it is working correctly. The one thing I found really odd about this scene is that although Saru does ask the computer to check itself, he doesn't seem to notice the change in voice of the computer. In the first season, it was established that Kelpians have better hearing than humans do. So if I can pick up that two different actresses are speaking this part, you would think that he could too. The second voice actress is Annabelle Wallace, who may sound familiar as she was the voice of the Discovery computer who identified with the name Zora in the short trek Calypso. I mentioned in my build-up video for the season that I thought that short trek would play a big part in this season, not just because it also takes place in the future, but because the director of the episode is also heavily involved in this season. It appears that the sphere data is what has caused Discovery's computer to become sentient. We saw a glimpse of this sentience last season when Captain Pike attempted to destroy the ship using the Enterprise, but the Discovery protected itself by raising the shields. We are then brought back down to Trill and the sacred caves of Makala, which were shown in the Deep Space Nine episode Equilibrium. If you are familiar with the episode, it is really cool to see that the producers of Discovery kept the same general aesthetic of the caves, but just enhanced it with today's technology and the money they have available now. They hurry to get Adira prepared to enter the water, as the Trill Commission will find them shortly. Z explains that a repressed memory may be stopping her from making a connection with the symbiote. He uses something called a Minta orb to help the process, and I can't help but wonder if this is an orb from the planet Bajor, as they were used on Deep Space Nine to trigger non-corporeal experiences. We then see the dinner that Saru has created for the bridge crew. Saru tells a story, and they go around the table trying to create haikus. Lieutenant Detmer, who has been visibly unnerved throughout the meal, starts to have a stress-induced episode. She and Stamets start to bicker, and then Tilly joins in. The fight quickly ends the meal, and they all disperse. I couldn't help but think this was a depiction of what happens at a lot of family dinner tables when the family is not able to properly communicate with each other. I especially like the part Giorgio plays as she just grabs the wine and walks away. I mean, what is more bad Thanksgiving than that? Adira is struggling, and Burnham has to join her as the Commission finds them in the caves. Burnham finds Adira within what looks like a construct of threads that are in actuality her lost memories, as well as the memories of the symbiote. We are then introduced to Gray, who appears to be a Trill awaiting the transfer of the symbiote from Admiral Tall to him. Adira explains that she loved Gray, but she still cannot remember much more. A cello then appears, and we see Adira watching Gray play said cello, which seems to be a skill he picked up after he became a host. Gray explains that the joining is about trust, and that the former hosts had to accept him and he them. Snapping out of the memory, Adira does not want to go forward, and the environment around them seems to become more fervent, as a box appears that Adira must open. Inside the box is a quilt that Adira had made for Gray that covers events in their life. Like a time they broke a replicator and it would not stop making apples, similar to how in the first episode of Lower Decks, we saw a broken replicator that kept spitting out bananas. I really like the imagery of the quilt because in a way, this is what a joined Trill host is, a patchwork of many things that creates one new thing. Suddenly, it looks like the ship they are on is hit with an asteroid, and Gray is mortally injured. Gray is very concerned that the symbiote will be lost, and in one final act of love, Adira volunteers to have the symbiote transferred to her. As the memory completes, the other Trill hosts appear around Adira and Burnham. which include Admiral Senatol and Gray. We also see a few Starfleet officers wearing different uniforms, with one wearing a version seen in Picard, meaning the symbiont is at least 700 years old. They accept Adira and she is welcomed as a new host for the symbiont. She is able to speak her names to the Trill Council as they show their gratitude to both Z and Adira for taking this leap, which may in fact save their society. They offer to guide Adira, but she states that she believes that she should stay on Discovery. The Council also mentions that if the Federation returns, they would be willing to discuss rejoining them. Back on the ship, Tilly joins Saru to discuss the failed dinner. Tilly states that even though the dinner did not go as planned, that the thought shows that Saru is a leader for the crew. Stamets then arrives and apologizes to Tilly for his behavior, while also encouraging her to further her work on a new interface for the Spore Drive with his help. Lieutenant Detmer then visits Dr. Culber and admits that she is not okay, which is difficult for her. The crew are then summoned by the computer to the shuttle bay for a surprise. The surprise ends up being a black and white movie of Buster Keaton, who the computer referenced earlier in the episode. Movie nights were shown on Jonathan Archer's Enterprise, as well as Tom Paris tried to organize them on Voyager. Culber and Saru discuss the current state of the crew and how they seem to be rounding a corner. Saru also acknowledges that he did not plan this event, but the computer did, and that he believes that the sphere data is trying to protect them as they protected it. The final scene shows Adira giving Burnham the coordinates for the remnants of the Federation as she begins to play the cello. When Burnham leaves, we see that Adira is able to see Gray, which is not something we have seen former hosts be able to do. I thought this was a beautiful episode, not just visually, but thematically. I think that most people this year can relate to a loss of connectivity with the people and the world we used to know, and are having to reintegrate ourselves into a new normal. The crew is in much more fantastical circumstances, but the feelings remain the same. I also like the introduction of Gray to the show, and having him be a Force ghost is an interesting move. The move seems to be permanent, as Gray has been announced as returning for Season 4, so it looks like in Adira we get two characters in one. This reminds me of the Umbrella Academy and the relationship that Klaus and Ben had, which was very fun to watch. I look forward to seeing how the show develops and what happens next for the crew now that they seem to be healing emotionally from their ordeal. But you let me know, what did I miss? Let me know in the comments if you saw anything that I did not mention and how you feel about the season so far. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for a lot more Star Trek videos. I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?